Hello, I'm Jyotika. Welcome to Excelling Psychology. Today we are going to go over October-November Paper 3 Variant 2 Section A Clinical Psychology. The agenda today is to be as thorough as possible but also to complete the video quickly. So the model answers already written in front of you. We'll just understand how these answers have been written as we go along. So what are the key things that we need to be careful about in writing the answers? I get asked a lot about whether I take tuition classes for psychology. So yes, I do. My contact details are in the description box and pinned comment always, so you can contact me from there. Okay, let's begin with the video. The first question that was asked in the October-November 24 paper was, Manjeet has been diagnosed with schizophrenia. Her psychiatrist thinks all mental disorders have a biological cause. Suggest how the psychiatrist could help Manjeet to understand the biological cause of schizophrenia. Okay, firstly, emphasize or focus on how. The command term here is how, meaning that you don't have to give any strengths or weaknesses. That is a top mistake here. Many students will write why the biological explanation is good or why it's bad. How is an AO2 command term, meaning you have to apply your knowledge to the given scenario. It's not AO3, you don't have to give strengths and weaknesses. It's also not AO1, because though most students don't aim for AO1 description, but they end up writing that. So they'll just go on talking about the biological cause, but they will not refer to Manjeet. They won't refer to the given scenario. Strictly it is AO2. Whatever you have learned about biological cause, you have to apply it to Manjeet's situation. That is the how command term. Next thing, see which cause has been asked for. There are multiple causes that you have learned of schizophrenia, biological and psychological. Make sure that you restrict yourself to biological. Don't be in a haste while reading and don't give any cause. You won't be credited if you give the psychological cause. Meaning if you give the cognitive errors of schizophrenia, you're not getting marks. In biological, you have learned about two causes. One is the genetic cause and one is biochemical. So one is the genetic cause, which is revolving around certain genes like COMT, DISC1, depending which course companion you're learning from. Accordingly, you have learned about some genes. So one is that explanation. In that also included are concordance rates, monozygotic, dizygotic twins. The other is the biochemical explanation revolving around mainly dopamine. Also, you might have learned about glutamate and other neurotransmitters which are associated like GABA. So these two are the ones which you can take here. They have said a biological cause, they have kept it very vague. So you're free to take either both. You can give something from genetic and something from biochemical, or you can take either one. You can only focus on genetic or only biochemical, whichever you know better. It is for 4 marks as such, so personally I would recommend taking both. The marks are quite a bit, like 4 marks is a fairly long answer that you will have to write. So if you can take from both, that will help you to justify 4 marks. Otherwise you might end up being too short for 4 marks. But also if you're taking only one, that's fine. Just make sure to give multiple aspects of that explanation so that you can justify 4 marks. Just keep in mind that you have to justify 4 marks. It should not look like a 2 marker. So if you're taking genetic, for example, you're taking concordance rates, good. But mostly you'll be able to write only worth 2 marks for that. Like you'll say something like the psychiatrist can explain to Manjeet that monozygotic twins tend to have a greater concordance of schizophrenia than dizygotic twins. That won't really justify 4 marks because that's just one point of genetic explanation that you're giving. So if you're giving only genetic, keep concordance rates as 1 point. Another point, you can name a candidate gene. So either you can name COMT or DISC1 and say that that impacts brain functioning and that is how that particular gene can lead to vulnerability of schizophrenia. So if you're taking any one explanation, give 2 details from it to justify 4 marks. Alternatively, take both explanations and give 1 detail from each. Something like what I have done in the model answer to get 4 marks. Okay, so keeping this in mind, let's quickly look at the model answer. Keep on referring to Manjeet and the psychiatrist when you're writing. Don't switch over to just biological cause says that this candidate gene is there, these are the concordance rates. Don't write it as if there's no scenario. You just ignore the scenario totally as if it's not even there in front of you. If they just wanted to ask you what is the biological cause, they would have phrased it that way. Explain the biological cause of schizophrenia. Why are they bothering to give you those details about the Manjeet and the psychiatrist? They want you to refer to that situation when you're answering. Okay, so make sure you mention that. So how you can begin is, the psychiatrist can explain to Manjeet that schizophrenia can be caused by an imbalance of neurotransmitters in the brain, particularly dopamine. Okay, now to score well. See, like I told you, roughly I'm assuming for this dopamine part I'm going to get 2 marks because it's just 1 point, doesn't deserve more than that. Another point I'm targeting with the genetic, COMT. But even to get 2 marks when I'm talking about dopamine, some more detail is needed. Like if I just mention, oh, excessive dopamine could be there, 1 mark for that. It's just like touching upon the point that dopamine has something to do. So how to justify 2 marks? By elaborating further. Excessive dopamine in some areas of the brain, but decreased dopamine in others. This is elaboration. This justifies 2 marks. When you give it fully or completely. You don't just name dopamine, but you say that in some areas of the brain it is more, in some it is less. I've tried to keep the model answers as simple as possible so that everyone can relate with it. But some of you who are learning particularly well and you're referring to those textbooks which are like highly detailed in this, it would be really good if you can add more specific details, like it enhances your answer a lot. So if you can say dopamine is high in certain areas like the limbic and mesolimbic pathways and decreased in other areas like the prefrontal, frontal and mesofrontal pathways, mesocortical pathways of the brain. If you can name the brain areas also where dopamine is less or more, definitely go ahead and do that. It really enhances your answer. Okay, so this I'm giving for 2 marks. For the next 2 marks, I mention a candidate gene, COMT. Again, if I just name that, if I say something like psychiatrist can tell Manjeet that COMT plays a role, it doesn't justify 2 marks because it's like just naming the gene. Elaborating further, what does the gene do exactly? It regulates dopamine levels. So COMT gene which regulates dopamine levels, that can malfunction or that can have a faulty polymorphism. In some terms like that you can put it, which increases vulnerability to schizophrenia. See, a psychiatrist is talking to Manjeet. They are going to give them accurate details. So they will not say something absurd like whoever has the gene has schizophrenia, right? That's not the truth. Whoever has the gene is more likely to develop schizophrenia if they have some particular malfunction in it or if they have a certain polymorphism of it. So as you've learned it in the textbook, a psychiatrist would also explain that way to Manjeet because a psychologist is a professional. So make sure you're writing it in those terms, completely proper detail you're giving so that you can get 2 marks. Okay, then I've just added in a point, this is actually kind of optional, but just to engage more with the STEM that is given. So I put in the brackets, if you want you can avoid giving this. The psychiatrist can use like diagrams or brain scans to explain about the imbalances, like to point out in which brain areas the imbalances are there. Why the psychiatrist can do that? Because Manjeet is a commoner, the psychiatrist is a professional. So just to make it easy for Manjeet to understand, they could use some diagrams and brain scans. This is, like I told you, just to engage with the STEM more, not compulsory to give this point. Okay, so I hope the takeaway that you're taking from this model answer is, whenever they ask you a question like this, some causes to apply to some disorder. Nowadays, most of the questions in clinical are coming very similar to each other, so you can expect something of this nature. Make sure to give 2 points and both detailed enough to justify 2 marks with each for a total of 4 marks. Let's come to the next question. Okay, next always they give an issue and debate. This time they had given idiographic versus nomothetic. So if you just know your issues and debates well, like description, these all AO1 questions, you can easily get 2 marks. So make sure you are able to answer a 2 marker for any possible debate. Instead of this, if they give reductionism versus holism, determinism versus free will, just make sure you can write the meaning of all these terms and you can ensure your 2 marks. Okay, when they ask what is idiographic versus nomothetic, we know these are 2 approaches to research. 1 mark we will get for explaining what is idiographic, 1 mark we will get for explaining what is nomothetic. The command term is outlined, which is completely O1, means its description. There is no scenario to apply to, and as of now they have not asked for any application, so no AO2 points should be given. It is not AO3. Don't give strengths or weaknesses. This will seem obvious to some of you, but students, the moment they see a debate, they start giving some strength or weakness. If a study is idiographic, it can get a lot of detailed information, which is better than just trying to apply to everybody and compromising on detail. They are not asking you about a strength. They are asking you what idiographic is. They are asking you what nomothetic is. So keep your focus to that. Okay, so you can see a simple model answer here. Idiographic approach to research is understanding the unique experiences of people. Also, usually it follows case studies, so I've mentioned that. No, though not compulsory, it can involve interviews, observations. You don't have to mention case study, but typically it's done through case study, so I've mentioned that. Nomothetic is the opposite approach to research, in which we try to develop some general laws, some common principles that we will be able to apply to everybody. So typically it involves standardized methods, quantitative data. You could mention something of that. Basically, whatever definition you're learning for idiographic and for nomothetic from your course companion, just give that here. Next, second part of this is to apply it. So now comes the AO2 part in combination with AO3, because a strength is also required. So application plus evaluation. Let's read the question first. Explain one strength of using an idiographic approach to diagnosing schizophrenia. This part is AO2 application. They want you to apply your knowledge of idiographic to schizophrenia particularly. So only strictly from schizophrenia you must give the strength. Don't give from any other topic, you won't get credit. And strength meaning AO3, they want you to say what is good about taking the idiographic approach. Now, in the syllabus, when we come across diagnostic criteria of schizophrenia, because here they mentioned diagnosis, so whenever we see the question, we start thinking about the related part of the syllabus. In that diagnostic part, they have given two subtopics. I'm ignoring the case study for now, that's not relevant. One is they have given ICD-11 criteria for diagnosing schizophrenia, and one is a case study. They don't tell us to take any particular case study when these summary studies are there. But in all the course companions, they have taken Aneja et al. The case study of the young boy who developed schizophrenia. He was a special case of VOS, very early onset schizophrenia. So when they tell me idiographic approach diagnosing schizophrenia, obviously that comes to my mind because it's a case study. And just now we saw idiographic approach is usually a case study. So now I'm going to give a strength revolving around that Aneja et al. Study. I don't need to name the study. I don't need to give any details of the study. It's only for 2 marks. But I keep that study in mind when I'm writing, just makes me easier to answer the question. How to structure this answer? First, name the strength. Just specify in general what is the strength of taking idiographic approach. Next, link it to diagnosis of schizophrenia. Means in that part you can relate it with the case study of very early onset schizophrenia. So 2 points, naming, linking, 2 marks. Many students, I'm seeing a habit like when they come to me for classes, just very long answers that they write. For 2 marks, the way they write answers is like they're 4 marks. That's why in every question I keep on explaining to you how to structure the answer. See, every answer you cannot write in the same way. Why are they giving you different marks? Why are they giving 2 marks for some and 4 marks for others? Not so that blindly every answer you write like as if it's a 4 marker only. So make sure you understand the structuring of answers. Every answer does not require so much verbosity that you should write so much about it. Be very precise. Name, link. That's all. Don't go more and more into the details for no reason. You're not getting any credit. And then there are very common complaints for paper 3. I could not complete the 6 marker, the 10 marker. For one option, I totally left the 6 and 10 marker. This is the reason, because you write so much unnecessary detail, in like a 2 marker, that you end up wasting so much precious time that you need for writing your essays later. Okay, so for a 2 marker, strictly naming and linking. We'll understand this better with the model answer. Strength is that, we get to know the unique experiences of the individual. I know it sounds same like the definition, but the definition itself is the strength, that we come to know something which is unusual, which is unique, which we don't get to commonly see because we are taking like a case study approach. And now to link it to that, if you want, you can name Aneja et al, no issue. But again, to keep it simple, I haven't named it, but I have specified that if there is a unique or unusual case like some child getting very early onset schizophrenia, that's not typical. Schizophrenia usually begins in mid-20s to early 30s. So there we can use a case study. See, anyways, in research methods last year AS, you have learned that case studies are done for unique cases because only unique cases justify such in-depth exploration. So idiographic is almost synonymous with case study. So that is only going to be the strength, that we can look like at an unusual place like VUS for that. Let's come to the next question. The third question also tends to be like a briefer scenario type of question. Leo's parents are worried about his recent behavior. His mother thinks that he may have OCD. And Leo's father says, I do not agree. Leo has not been washing his hands all the time. Suggest 2 reasons why Leo's mother may think he has OCD. I don't have much to add to how to structure all this and how to approach this, because what I've said for the earlier situation question, Manjeet one, the same thing applies here. So very quickly, 2 ways are given. Each way or each reason is for 2 marks and 4 marks total. So we better justify by giving each point in sufficient detail, as each point should justify 2 marks. One thing is, I remember when this question came, most of the students were like very confused, because Manjeet's father is saying that he doesn't wash his hands all the time. So what does he do? They haven't specified in the question what does he do. Why is the mother suspecting that he has OCD? That is exactly the point of the answer. Indirectly they are telling you that besides washing, what else is there in OCD? They want you to give that with the help of a situation. So they are just checking whether you know about what else makes for OCD besides washing. Because what happens is, in OCD, the most common obsessive compulsive behavior is obsession wise to think of germs and compulsion wise to keep on doing washing, something like we've seen in the Rapoport study. So in many students' mind, OCD is synonymous with thinking of germs and washing hands. So here they want to assess, do you understand OCD besides washing hands? Can you think of anything else that qualifies for OCD? That's why they haven't named anything, because they want you to think of possibilities and supply in the answer. So understand that that is the intention of the question. Again, it's scenario based. So once more, I would like to emphasize, do make reference to Leo, mother, all that when you're writing. It seems like description when you're writing because there isn't enough information. So you are supplying most of the thing. There is not much to engage with in the situation. Regardless, you name Leo and the mother because they have given you a scenario. Don't convert it into a descriptive question. Don't start writing generally without any reference to the stem. Okay, let's look at the model answer. Literally here they have like explicitly said 2 reasons. In Manjeet, they are not explicitly said that you give 2 explanations. Here, because they have said 2 reasons, I have segregated it into 2 paragraphs just to make it like prominent to the examiner that I have covered 2 reasons. See, examiners are going to read your answer carefully even if you merge it into 1 paragraph. But just be a little empathetic. An examiner has to read so many answers after every test that takes place. So you can do the least, to reduce their burden by organizing, putting down on paper your answers well, so that they don't have to struggle with finding where is the first point, where is the second point. And what you have to gain from that is, if they don't struggle to find your points, they will not miss out on anything accidentally also. So whatever you have covered, you will get marks for that. So for your own good also, put down points neatly. Don't write in a very, like a very compressed sort of way. Make things neat when you're writing. Okay, so the first reason why Leo's mother might feel that, he's having OCD, maybe he's showing some compulsions. They haven't mentioned, but it's understood. So I need to give an example of what possible compulsion he might be showing other than washing his hands. Anytime you need to look at the answers fully, just pause the video, read the answer, and then you can continue with the video. Okay, so he might be showing compulsions. Maybe he's checking things repeatedly. Maybe he is trying to put things in a particular order and he gets disturbed if they are not in that order. Besides washing, even these things count as compulsions. So these are the examples I've given. And just to make it a little more specific, maybe he's checking locks multiple times. So I've given an example in that form. Or maybe he's arranging objects. Considering he's a child, you can also, most probably he's a child, it looks like. So you could also suggest something like, maybe he's arranging his stationery in order or something like that. So just to make it more clear that what could be the checking or ordering behavior to justify 2 marks. Another thing he might be doing is, we have seen in OCD, another feature is he might be becoming very anxious if someone interrupts his compulsions. Think about the Charles case study done by Rapoport. in that how the boy Charles used to get very upset if anyone tried to stop his rituals. So maybe even Leo has that sort of anxiety that his mother has seen. And why that indicates that it has OCD, like if she's interrupting him and he's getting upset about it, because that means some sort of obsession he's not able to vent out in the form of a compulsion. Otherwise he wouldn't get disturbed by his mother interrupting him. So that indirectly suggests that an obsession is there. See, obsession the mother will not be able to see directly. What he's thinking, she cannot like peer into his mind for that. But if he's showing some visible signs like anxiety, they might be indirectly indicating that he's obsessed about something. So the mother could look out for that. And that is why she might be suspecting that he has OCD. Alternatively, to write this answer to make it even more simple, you could give two compulsions also. Like if you see, I've given two compulsions here into one paragraph because I wanted to keep compulsion separate and obsession separate. Your way of approaching it might be one paragraph you talk about one compulsion. So maybe Leo is showing repeated checking of locks. Next paragraph could be about another compulsion. Maybe Leo is showing ordering behavior, like trying to arrange his stationery in some particular order. So you can put it that way if that is your preference. They just want two reasons, meaning two compulsions, two obsessions, or one obsession, one compulsion, something like that. Anything other than washing and germs. Next is relatedly, explain one reason why an interview may not help him diagnose with OCD. So again, I remember students were like, where did interview come from? We have learned about YBOCS, but that's a partial interview. Mostly it's a checklist. They are asking you hypothetically. See, you have learned research methods. You know what an interview is. Even if you haven't learned any particular like only interview to diagnose OCD, you know, you can think of how an interview could be used to diagnose OCD. So think hypothetically and imagine if an interview would be used, then what would be the problem in diagnosis? So every question that is there does not have to be something from the syllabus only. It could be some part of the syllabus, like they're taking from research methods interview, and some part they're taking from what you have actually learned now, OCD symptoms, and they're combining the two and phrasing a question out of that. So don't get distracted by other things like, you know, did we do an interview or not for OCD? Just take it as at face value. They're saying what if an interview was used, you think what if an interview was used, that's all. It is for 2 marks, one reason. So name the reason and explain it. Always 2 markers, you know, just structure this way. Name, link, name, explain. 2 sentences and finish it. Don't write more than that, don't waste time. See, one problem in interview technique, like what we have learned in general research methods, interviews require that the respondent should be articulate. Interviews are going to involve open questions, otherwise there's no point of doing interview. Then we'll do questionnaire. So if we're asking open questions, the purpose is that the other person should speak at length. So problem is going to come if the other person cannot speak at length. And this should be the first difficulty that should come to your mind, because after all, Leo seems to be a child. And for children, it's going to be difficult to articulate. You have learned in studies like Saavedra and Silverman. Even that Lemukel study which you have done for OCD. Children find it difficult to speak out. So first you just name that Leo might not be able to articulate. Then you explain in this then why is this a weakness. If he is not able to articulate, what is the problem which is coming because of that. If he cannot articulate, he won't be able to give the full information of what is happening with him exactly because of his OCD. Or he might not be able to say anything at all about what is happening with him, and so then the psychiatrist will not know what are his symptoms because he's not able to express them. And so some faulty diagnosis like misdiagnosis or underdiagnosis might take place in his case. So that way you can explain it. Okay, so very easy to score marks on these type of answers. Very easy to score on 6 and 10 markers also, provided that you have prepared for them. 6 and 10 markers in section A, any of the sections actually are those which you can anticipate. You know these sort of questions can come. So you can already have at least the outlines ready before the paper. That is what we do in the classes. We prepare at least the outlines, if not the full answers, depending how much time we have. So I hope all of you are doing that. I hope all of you are preparing your 6 and 10 markers in advance and not leaving it for, you know, in the paper let the question come, then I will think what to cover in 6 or 10 marker. That's a bad approach. You will end up struggling, thinking so much that you might not be able to write on time. So I hope you are planning out your essays. across boards in psychology, A levels, you prepare your essay outlines. That's a given thing. Easiest way to score and biggest help you can give yourself to not get troubled in the exam. Okay, so make sure you have your 6 and 10 marker ideas ready of what you're going to put down, at least at the minimum. Okay, the first question they asked in October, November was, describe what psychologists have discovered about explanations of impulse control. Nowadays they name 2 because it's for 6 marks. Earlier it was for 8 marks, they used to give 3. So you have to be very careful which 2 they have mentioned. Behavioral, positive reinforcement and cognitive. Miller's feeling state, meaning that you do not give the biological. The third one is biological, dopamine. You do not give that. You give only these 2. Don't waste your time giving that one. You're not going to get marks. How do you structure a 6 marker? 2 paragraphs. 1 paragraph on the first bullet point which is given, second on the second one. As straightforward as that. What do you keep in mind while writing your 6 marker? Number 1, terminology. You use good terms. If you're talking about reinforcement, you use the word reinforcement, reward. You don't use generic terms. You don't say things like outcome, what the person will get, what the person will not get. You don't use casual language. You use words like reinforcement when you're writing. Next thing you keep in mind is to explain points, develop points. If you're saying that positive reinforcement can lead to impulsive behavior, how? You don't just leave the point at, oh, it can lead to impulsive behavior. Exactly how does that happen? You explain. Basically, you show your understanding of things. What else you do? You don't give unnecessary detail. Like if you're giving examples, one example is enough. You don't go on elaborating on the same. You don't give strengths and weaknesses. There's a separate 10 marker for that. So you don't introduce it here. In the textbook, the explanation must have given you in lot of details about both these, positive and Miller's feeling state. But you include only the key points. The key terms that are there, you keep on naming them with proper terminology and you keep on explaining those. You keep on showing your understanding of those. You give 1 or 2 examples where necessary. But you don't go on repeating on say 1 point only like positive reinforcement and don't give another point like variable ratio schedule of reinforcement. You don't skip on that because you have gone in unnecessary detail of positive reinforcement. It is a describe command term AO1. You do not give evaluations. You do not give strengths and weaknesses at all. You do not give introduction and conclusion at all. No credit is there for that. Don't waste your time. In general, what is impulse control disorder, what is pyromania, what is kleptomania, you're not going to get any marks for writing anything. Be very focused when you're writing the 6 marker. They have asked you for 2 things, you talk only about those things. You don't talk about unnecessary things. Okay, so model answer, I cannot read the full thing for 6 marker. It's very long. Just the key things I'll keep on, explaining to you what points I've just made, like what you should do. Just to give you examples of that. If you want to read the full answer, just pause the video and read it. I said good terminology should be used. So you can see in the positive reinforcement explanation. Okay, so you can see I have used good terms like positive reinforcement, operant conditioning, right? Not some theory, vaguely something I have not given. Operant conditioning name I have used. I have shown my understanding of how positive reinforcement applies to impulsive behavior. For example, if someone wins in gambling or they get a thrill when they steal something in the case of kleptomania, that is the reinforcement or the reward that they experience. So with this example, I have shown my understanding. Then I have moved to the next term, variable ratio schedule. I have named Skinner, who's given the term, not compulsory, but definitely takes your answer to a high level if you can name relevant psychologists. So, what is this variable ratio schedule? First, I have defined it that it's an unpredictable system of giving rewards. The gambler cannot anticipate when they will get the rewards. So, they keep on anticipating with every turn. They become increasingly hopeful that that is when they'll get the reward. And that is why if there are any occasional wins or near misses, even that is sufficient to keep them hooked on to gambling. And they don't give up, or that behavior does not extinguish in them because of that occasional win which comes in through the VRR schedule. So this is how you can explain. As I've told you before, you can pause the video and read the full paragraph for a better understanding of how to go about it. The same thing I've repeated for Miller's feeling state. I've explained what a feeling state is through an example of a person who has pyromania, how that person might be feeling a sense of relief after the tension that comes of setting fire. And then this whole episode of the tension, relief, everything combined along with the emotions that they have experienced with the situation gets imprinted into their mind in what Miller has called an addictive memory. So the addictive memory forms in their mind. And then later on, once the addictive memory has formed, any trigger from the environment is sufficient to bring back that feeling state in them and propel them again towards that pyromaniac behavior. Alternatively, their own mental states, like being in the same state of tension or relief, and even guilt, in fact, as Miller has mentioned, is sufficient to again propel them in the same behavior. Now, these concepts of triggers in the environment is explained through context-dependent memory, and mental states, how they can serve as triggers, he has explained in state-dependent memory. So you can see I've used both those terms while explaining state-dependent and context-dependent. So again, good use of terminology. And then again, good use of terminology even within, it's not just the names of the concepts. Within the concepts also to explain, like in the feeling state, what is the cycle that is established. Trigger, urge, act, relief, memory. For the cycle also I have used good terms like trigger, urge, not rough terms like getting provoked and setting the fire and feeling a little better after doing, not general terms like this. Trigger, urge, act, relief, these type of terms we have used in, learnt in feeling state explanation. So that is how we need to give this answer. Many times students feel the terminology is little too much to learn. They can't remember that much. See, this is a model answer. Of course, there's going to be very perfect terminology in this. You might not be able to write that much. But as much as possible, yes, you have to give good terminology. It is a requirement of the mark scheme. How do you adapt to good terminology? You read. Reading is very important. You reread the textbook. That's not the only thing you do. You practice your answers also. But definitely you read and reread the textbook multiple times. The more you read, the more you get into a habit of using good terms. When your teacher explains in the class, you listen very carefully to what terms she is using. So good listening, good reading will help you to use good terminology. Don't obsess over terminology. That is not the message over here. Of course, understanding is more important. But how do you explain something effectively? With the help of terminology. In your words and what you understand, the explanation does not come out well. That is why they insist, and after all, you're a psychology student. So as a psychology student, you should not talk as if any layman would. What is the difference between you and a layperson then? So you show your knowledge of terminology as well. Okay, finally coming to the 10 marker. 10 marker I think is something I've discussed a lot in past videos also. Here, like I told you, I am aiming to be a little quick about this video. So if you want a very detailed explanation of the 10 marker, you can look at my other videos in which I've explained what is the Peel format, Peel C format and so forth. Other past papers which I've done previously, which are more lengthy videos than this one. In them you will get more detailed explanation of how to write the 10 marker. So I'm taking it for granted you already have some idea how to write, and here I can just give you a brief explanation of how I've gone about for this particular question. See, whatever comes in the 6 marker, the same question comes in the 10 marker. There you have to describe, it is AO1, here it is evaluate, AO3. So they have given the same two explanations for impulse control disorders that we have to evaluate. Some similar principles apply here, no introduction, no conclusion, because we are not getting any credit for that. And needless, actually it should be needless to say, but students do this, so I have to mention. Don't repeat what you have given in the 6 marker here. Again, they will start explaining what is Miller's feelings. Why will they give you two separate questions if they want to assess the same thing? So please do not include anything from the 6 marker here. So no description, no introduction, no conclusion, no description. Please follow the Peel C format. If you're not strictly following, that's fine. Peel C format just means you give context and you give reasoning for every point. In the model answers which have been released from the board, literally you can see they mark context, they mark analysis in the answers. You want to know more about this, like I said, you can watch my other videos, but make sure you're not giving any empty points, in the sense these explanations support nurture. Why? No reason. You have not given any reason why you're saying they support nurture. How they support nurture? No context. What is there in them which is supporting nurture? Nothing. They support nurture, they don't support nature, so they are reductionist. So you're not getting any marks for that. So make sure you're giving context and reasoning. Okay, and totally examiners repeatedly say they prefer 3 issues. They consider that to be a good range of issues, so you can give 3, including the named issue. Named issue is one of the 3 issues which you're writing. For good organization, again just separate the 3 paragraphs and preferably keep the first one as the named one. Not compulsory, but just good. The named one always has more weightage than the other issues that you're going to take. So keep the first one as the named one, and the other 2 can be any of your choice. Preferably give the ones from the syllabus. They are the most relevant, but if not, you can give any other issues and debates. Nowadays, there is this thing that, take both the explanations in every point that you're making. So as far as possible for every point, like say you're taking nature versus nurture, take both. Behavioral positive reinforcement and cognitive Miller feeling state. So on each issue, give the standing of each explanation. As far as word count or length of the answer is concerned, again just follow the PLC format, follow context and reasoning for every issue. Then you don't need to stress over the word count or the length. Automatically the length will be sufficient if you are following the correct format of writing. Examiners are definitely not marking you for length. They are not giving more marks to the student who is writing a longer answer and less marks to the student who is writing a shorter answer. They are giving you marks for giving good points, again with context and reason. For that they are giving you marks. So your focus needs to be in the correct place. Okay, because otherwise many times students will, I wrote such a long answer, I didn't get marks. You write 100 pages also, you will not get marks if it is not in the correct format. So make sure your focus is in the correct place. Okay, in this particular answer they have said nature versus nurture, so I have begun with that. See, both these explanations are supporting nurture. I said you have to give context, so why the behavioral explanation is supporting nurture? Because over time, through reinforcement repeatedly of impulsive behaviors, like say gambling for gambling disorder, stealing for kleptomania, the individual has been getting rewards repeatedly. Especially if we talk about the variable ratio schedule, they have been getting these rewards in an unpredictable manner, which has prevented them from extinguishing their behavior. So this is how nurture is supporting. This is the learning which is showing that nurture is supported here. Similarly, in the case of feeling state, I have not mentioned it because it will become too long, so I have given only one example. You can say that over time, as the individual has associated positive feelings with the impulsive behavior, such that today any context or any mental state can trigger it. They are engaging in the impulsive behavior. So again, nurture or learning is reflecting in their behavior today. So this is how both are supporting nurture. What is good about them supporting nurture? Now coming to the analysis, this was only the context. This is only how they are supporting nurture. I have explained that. But why is it good? Or alternatively, you can give why it is a weakness. I will say give both. Give a point and then give a counterpoint. So to begin with, why it is a strength? Because it helps in intervention. For example, contingency management, which you have seen later in the treatment. Both the contingency management therapies that you have seen, covert sensitization and imaginal desensitization, both are based on the idea of nurture, that over time the individual has learned this behavior. So in covert sensitization, we are reducing that reward, that reinforcement which is associated, and we are replacing it with an aversive stimulus. And in imaginal desensitization, we are doing away with the trigger itself. We are reducing the tension itself so that further behavior does not perpetuate. So if you want, you can give a specific example like that. In my point, it would become too much to elaborate on either covert or sensitization or imaginal desensitization. So I've just said broadly that they help in contingency management. See, this is where I want you to know that there can be many ways of writing the same answer. There's no right or wrong. Just make sure you're getting the structure, that you're understanding that you need to give context and reasoning. Now to give a counterpoint to this, it can be difficult to give counterpoints everywhere. See, this is a model answer, so literally I've written long paragraphs everywhere. I've included counterpoints, but strongly I'll recommend at least in 1-2 paragraphs, especially in the named issue, do give a counterpoint. So if you're not able to give everywhere like me, I understand that much time is not there, or maybe you're not able to think that much. But at least learn from this answer and make sure in 1-2 places at least you show that detailed analysis. So for a counterpoint to this, definitely nature is being ignored. We have learned that dopamine is also playing a role when it comes to impulsive behavior. If we are not looking at that, then we are being reductionist. Because for some individuals, it might be true that because of reinforcement or feeling state, they are developing these conditions. But for others, it might be that dopamine is the reason behind all this. So then we are not able to understand those cases fully. This leads to reductionism. So that's the counterpoint that I'm giving. Now, sometimes students tell me that in these answers, I have said don't give description, don't give anything from the 6 marker. But then I am talking about, again, about variable ratio schedule. I'm talking about dopamine fluctuations. Why am I doing that? Because I am supporting the point that I've given. I've said this is nurture. I'm pointing out where I'm seeing nurture in the theory. Am I just giving it for the sake of giving it? Am I just talking about variable ratio schedule in isolation without linking it to nurture? No. I'm giving it as it is relevant to nurture. So of course that I have to give. That is known as contextualizing. When I say don't give description, when I say don't give anything from the 6 marker, in isolation without relevance to any issue, don't go on repeating what you have written in the 6 marker. That is what I mean. Okay, now the rest of the issues, I'll just go over them quickly because I think most of the general points you need to keep in mind while writing, I've explained to you. I've taken idiographic versus nomothetic, that is relevant over here. You can take any other issue, whichever you can explain properly. Behavioral explanation is nomothetic. See, sometimes what happens is we are looking at 2 explanations, and them only we can contrast. One supports one side, the other supports the other side. So that's good. It helps to balance the paragraph, and we don't need to bring further counterpoints. Like they only serve as counterpoints for each other. So we get saved in terms of length also. Now to explain why behavioral explanation is nomothetic, because we are assuming that everybody who is undergoing reinforcement, like say in a VRR schedule, everyone is going to develop impulsive behavior. So we have a common principle for why impulsive disorders develop for everybody, for all cases. Any example we can give to support, like pyromania, in that there is thrill seeking. So that is also as a form of reward or reinforcement which is coming from the relief, which is experienced when the tension of setting fire goes away. So because we are explaining all sorts of behavior, gambling we have already given example, even pyromania we can explain through positive reinforcement. So it is a nomothetic approach. But in contrast, now the counterpoint is from the other explanation, Miller, that is idiographic. Because there it is about the individual's subjective feeling state or memory, addictive memory that they have developed, with feelings like in some people's cases it is about power that they experience in that feeling state. For others it can be some sort of compensation or belonging that they're feeling. Like we see in the case of John, he used to feel a sense of belonging which he did not get from his own father. So that was helping him to do that behavior again and again. Like that was a part of his feeling state. So Miller has acknowledged that in some people's case, a particular emotion might be driving the feeling state like power. In another person's case, another emotion like belonging might be driving it. So that is why it's an idiographic approach. It accounts for everyone's unique experiences. Now to analyze this, I've given context of why it is idiographic. Is this good or bad? A problem with this is that support is definitely from case studies. Like I just gave the example of John. We might not be able to generalize to others. See, it's good there is rich detail in it. We understand fully why John, to overcome the inferiority sense that he was feeling by being with his father, because of that he was engaging in gambling. But then we cannot say that everyone must be engaging in gambling to overcome poor self-esteem. So that becomes a limitation of idiographic approach. Finally, I've taken reductionism versus holism. Tends to be an easy issue to discuss anywhere, and for this one it's very relevant also. As such, you can claim both are reductionist, especially if you take into account dopamine explanation, because none of them are considering neurotransmitters or the biological aspect. I just felt that it become very repetitive. I've already given that in nature versus nurture. So here what I've done in reductionism versus holism is I've contrasted the explanations against each other. One being reductionist, the other being relatively more holistic. The other one is also not holistic. Just in comparison, it's slightly more holistic. So I've taken it in that perspective. Many times what happens is, supposing like I take nature versus nurture, I conclude off by saying it's reductionist. Then students feel we shouldn't take reductionism versus holism at all. In a sense, we've already covered it. That's true. But if we can discuss reductionism versus holism from a different angle, a different perspective, then we can take it. There's no problem. Here I'm arguing for something else. I'm not repeating the same things about dopamine which I had said earlier. So as far as behavioral approach is concerned, it is reductionist. Because we are not looking at internal thoughts, emotions. We are saying it's like a stimulus response, typical behavioral mechanism. A reward comes from the environment, the organism gives a response to that. So stimulus, response keeps on happening. Very, very reductionist because we know emotions are involved. As we've seen in Miller's explanation, for example, so here I introduce Miller's explanation. There is a lot of emotion which drives such behavior. It's not mechanical like behaviorism assumes. There's a lot of personal meaning, like we were just seeing the case of John. The person attaches his self-image or his self-esteem to that behavior. That's why he keeps on repeating it. So those aspects are not being considered in behaviorism, but they are being considered in the feeling state. Not only the feeling state considers the emotional aspects, it also considers that these behaviors tend to be cyclical. Like we had seen in the description part also. First comes the tension, then the urge to act, then relief. After relief comes shame, and the shame by itself becomes a trigger to set off the cycle once again. So the cycle is like self-perpetuating. So not only it considers emotions, in the process it also considers how some habit formation or some cycle might be coming, because of which that impulsive behavior is getting generated repeatedly. So definitely this explanation is much more complex than the behavioral one. So it is more holistic in nature. But of course, even this has its limitations. Feeling states are very subjective by nature. Because they are so complex, they are subjective. And we noted this earlier also. So they can be very difficult to define and measure. In research, when I want to assess feeling state, like they wanted to do in the case of John, we have to interview the individual. Self-report aspects come in, which can reduce the validity. So that is a limitation. Okay, so that is one possible solution that we can have for the October-November 3-2 paper clinical psychology. Of course, there are many other ways of writing the answers, but I hope you have got the structure of writing and what important points you need to focus on for every question. Also, any challenges in understanding any of the questions, I hope they are now resolved and they will guide you to write your further answers for similar type of questions also better. I would just like to share with you what all resources are available from my end for the 9990 curriculum. So if you're not interested in that, you can quit the video right now. I just want those who are interested to know that on my website regularly I upload ready answers, like ready essays, revision notes. At the time of uploading this video, I don't know how many will be available, but quite a few designer study model answers, essay packs for different topics are available. In case you're short on time and you're not able to write your answers yourself, or you just need to have model answers or references in front of you while writing, such packages are available on my website for purchase. So you can visit there and you can buy. I'm also making video courses now for AS. I've made quite a few videos. We'll be making for A-level soon. So in case you want access to exclusive videos which are more in depth than these, in which I explain step by step how to write different type of answers and explain to you how scoring is done, what common mistakes are made while writing answers. So if you want sort of pre-recorded lectures, for some reason if you're not able to access classes with me and you want direct access to already recorded videos, of course they are one way. I don't recommend that strongly. Two-way interaction in tuition is always better. But in case only that is feasible for you right now, I'm making a lot of recorded videos also available. So I'm increasing the number of resources that I'm giving out. Besides giving out tuitions, I've also started offering model answers for purchase and recorded videos for purchase. So I don't know as of uploading this video how many will be available, but you can stay tuned to my website, and on this YouTube channel also I keep on putting updates of what new materials are available. So you can keep on checking out from time to time. You can subscribe this channel so that you get your notifications, and then whatever you're interested in purchasing, you can reach out to me for that. Okay, so this was just to notify you on what all you can access to make your learning easier for 9990. That's all that I have to offer for today. I'll be making another video soon solving consumer psychology section for this paper. So in case you've taken clinical and consumer, that video will be helpful to you. That's all for today then. Goodbye. Thank you for watching.